Just when viewers thought Todd Grimshaw had already suffered as much as anyone possibly could, Coronation Street pushed him into an even more terrifying turning point, where simply staying alive has become a battle in itself. Todd has finally managed to break free from Theo Silverton's control after an attack that left him barely able to stand. But what makes this story so heavy is not only the physical violence. It is the sense that Todd has been worn down bit by bit throughout the entire time he has been with Theo. At the start of the relationship, Todd convinced himself that Theo's disturbing behavior came from the damage of his troubled past. He believed that, with enough patience and enough love, he could help Theo change. That belief is exactly what kept him there far longer than was safe. But Theo's controlling nature became harder and harder to ignore. It started with criticism and judgment over what Todd chose to eat, even going as far as forcefully making him eat kebab meat in a deeply aggressive way. From there, everything escalated step by step. Theo pushed Todd through an exhausting exercise regime and even signed him up for a marathon against his wishes. What makes Theo especially frightening is that he does not just control Todd's actions. He also manipulates his mind, constantly making Todd feel as though he is the one causing problems, upsetting people, or interfering where he should not. When someone is gaslit for long enough, they begin to lose trust in their own instincts, and Todd has clearly been pushed into exactly that state. Theo also did everything he could to isolate Todd from the people who genuinely cared about him, especially Billy and Summer. That is always one of the clearest warning signs in an abusive relationship, because once a victim is cut off from the people who could help them think clearly, escape becomes much harder. Todd tried more than once to pull away, but every time he came close, Theo found another way to drag him back in. When Todd could no longer tolerate the abuse, Theo turned to self-harm, trapping him in guilt and emotional obligation. Todd did not stay because he felt safe. He stayed because he was made to believe that leaving would lead to something even worse. Then the physical violence became more and more explicit. Theo poured milk over Todd's head, smashed his face into a mirror, and beat him brutally. One of the most haunting moments came in last year's special episode, which focused entirely on Todd and Theo's story through different camera angles. In that episode, Theo locked Todd in the bathroom overnight, then deliberately provoked him into reacting. When Todd shoved him, Theo fell onto a coffee table and ended up in hospital, while Todd was arrested for assault. The true cruelty of that situation was that the neighbors started to believe Todd was the violent one in the relationship. That kind of reversal is devastating, because the victim is not only abused, but also made to look like the abuser. Todd even hid secret cameras in the flat to prove what Theo was doing to him, but Theo turned that against him as well. After finding the cameras, he doctored the footage to make himself look like the victim. That detail makes Theo even more chilling, because it proves he is not simply acting in moments of blind rage. He is calm enough, calculating enough, and cold enough to distort reality in his favor. That turns him from a violent partner into someone following a deliberate pattern of abuse. At the start of 2026, Todd briefly seemed to see a light at the end of the tunnel when he finally opened up to Billy about what he had been enduring. He came very close to leaving Theo, but that hope was almost completely shattered when Billy died in the Corriedale crossover event. What makes it even more tragic is that Todd has no idea Billy died, only because Theo trapped him in the minibus moments before it exploded. If that truth fully comes out, the emotional impact on Todd could be even more devastating, because Billy was not just a friend. He was one of Todd's last real sources of comfort and support. In recent weeks, Theo has grown increasingly paranoid as it became obvious that Todd's loved ones were starting to realize he was being abused. That is why he came up with the Belfast plan, convincing Todd that they needed to leave Weatherfield and get away from people who were becoming too suspicious. In his exhausted and emotionally broken state, Todd agreed. That choice did not really feel like hope. It felt more like surrender. Deep down, Todd seemed to know everything was wrong, but he also understood that openly resisting Theo in that moment could cost him even more. Everything truly changed when Todd learned about Summer's theory that Theo may have killed Billy. That was almost certainly the final piece that made it impossible for Todd to keep lying to himself. He tried to escape the flat, but Theo caught him and unleashed his violence all over again. In the episode broadcast on April 13th, Sarah Platt found Todd outside the flat covered in blood. That image alone makes it clear that Todd is no longer just trapped in a toxic relationship. He is now in genuine danger of losing his life. The next part of the story suggests Todd will go to the police and finally describe the nightmare he has been living through to DS Lisa Swain and Kit Green. That could prove to be the most important turning point of all, because Todd is no longer staying silent. Even so, nothing about this feels straightforward. Coronation Street has already confirmed that Theo is one of the 5 possible victims in the flashforward storyline, which means someone is set to die in the coming weeks. That immediately raises a deeply troubling possibility. Could Todd end up being the one who kills Theo? After everything he has suffered, Todd is standing on an incredibly fragile line between self-defense, emotional collapse, and total desperation. If the show takes him that far, it would become a true tragedy, because the victim would end up being consumed by the very destruction forced onto him. Still, Theo going to prison feels like the more logical outcome if the story intends to leave Todd with any real chance of recovery. At the same time, the series has already revealed that Todd is not Theo's first victim. This summer, viewers learned more about Theo's past when he was confronted by his ex-boyfriend Owen during a night out on Canal Street. Owen openly accused Theo of being abusive, but Theo stayed completely composed and twisted the narrative, painting Owen as the controlling one instead. Then, when Todd questioned him, Theo repeated the same tactic, turning perfectly innocent questions into some kind of unfair accusation. That almost confirms this is not new behavior. Todd is simply the latest victim in a much longer pattern. At the moment, there has been no confirmation that Todd is leaving Coronation Street, but the possibility cannot be ruled out. If Todd ends up killing Theo, even unintentionally, prison could be waiting for him. If not, then leaving Weatherfield altogether to fully escape this nightmare may also become a real option. Either way, the clearest feeling now is that Todd has been pushed to his absolute limit, and this storyline is unlikely to end gently. If the show handles it properly, the ending will not just be about Theo finally facing consequences. It will also be a test of whether Todd can still save any part of his own life before it is too late.